When my grandfather passed away last June, I didn't expect to inherit anything, much less his old ranch tucked away on the southern edge of Clearwater Ridge. I'd only been out there a handful of times as a kid, distant memories of hay bales, creaky wooden floors, and my grandfather's gruff laugh. So when the lawyer read the will and announced that the entire 200-acre ranch and its assets were being left to me, I was speechless. My name, Logan Reese, echoed in the room like a firecracker. My relatives, especially my cousin Travis, who fancied himself the natural heir, were furious. Travis stormed out before the lawyer had even finished, muttering about lawyers and unfair favoritism. I was just a software developer renting a small apartment in the city, not a rancher or a land baron. But 2 weeks later, curiosity got the better of me. I packed up my hatchback and drove the 3 hours to Clearwater Ridge. The ranch house was worn but charming, its wraparound porch shaded by massive oaks that must have been older than my grandfather himself. The land, though, was breathtaking, rolling green hills, a glimmering creek that curled through the property like a ribbon, and fields that stretched toward the horizon. I spent the first few days exploring the land with an old set of property maps my grandfather had kept in a fireproof box in the study. That's when I noticed something odd. At the southern edge of the ranch, where the barbed wire fence should have clearly marked the boundary, there stood 5 large, gleaming homes. They were nothing like the modest cabins and barns dotting the rest of the valley. These were modern, architectural marvels with infinity pools, 3-car garages, and neatly trimmed hedges. I pulled out the maps again and cross-checked them with GPS coordinates and official county records. The result was clear. At least 1 acre of my land had been swallowed up by the Clearwater Grove Estates, a high-end gated community with its own strict homeowners association. Digging into the county archives, I uncovered something even more alarming. 10 years ago, when my grandfather was well into his 80s and suffering from declining health, the HOA had quietly shifted their development's fence line by about 150 feet right onto his land. 5 luxury homes had been built, each encroaching at least partially on a property that legally belonged to our family. No permits, no transfers, no agreements. Just stolen ground and silence. I scheduled a meeting with the Clearwater Grove HOA board the following week. Their clubhouse looked like it belonged in a country club, brochure-vaulted ceilings, marble floors, and a chandelier that probably cost more than my car. When I walked in, I was greeted by Cheryl Hanley, the HOA president, a woman with a rigid smile and a posture that screamed passive aggression. Beside her sat 5 other board members, all of them looking at me like I'd just tracked mud into their sanctuary. "What can we do for you, Mr. Reese?" Cheryl asked. "I'm a new owner of the Reese Ranch," I began, laying the county survey and updated maps on the polished table. "According to the records, about 1 acre of my land has been encroached upon by your development. Specifically, 5 homes in Clearwater Grove have been partially built on my property." Cheryl's smile faltered. "That's simply not possible. Those homes have been standing for years. Our property lines were established and verified before we broke ground." "I'm sure you believe that," I replied, "but here are the original surveys and a letter from the county registrar confirming the encroachment." The room fell into uncomfortable silence until a man named Greg Houston, a retired banker who clearly enjoyed being the loudest voice in the room, puffed up his chest. "Listen, son," he said, "Clearwater Grove is a respected community. We don't take kindly to false claims. This isn't a claim. It's documented fact. I'd like to discuss a resolution," I said. "There's nothing to resolve," Cheryl snapped. "Those homeowners have deeds to their lots. Deeds that include land my grandfather never sold. You're occupying my property illegally." Cheryl's smile turned icy. "We could drag this out in court for years, Mr. Reese. Or," she added, her voice softening, "we can offer you a settlement. $25,000 to go away quietly." I blinked. $25,000? That's insulting. The land alone is worth 10 times that, not to mention the construction. It's a generous offer for someone your age. You probably need the money. I stood up. "You'll hear from me soon." The very next day, a certified letter arrived at my temporary address on the ranch. It was from the HOA's legal team, accusing me of trespassing, harassment, and unauthorized access to a gated community. They demanded $250,000 in damages. The irony was almost comical. They had built mansions on my land. I could have hired a lawyer and gone down the legal rabbit hole. But I had a better idea. I started by digging deeper into the infrastructure of Clearwater Grove. After a few calls and some research at the county water department, I discovered something crucial. The entire development's water system depended on a single underground well. And that well, according to topographical maps and water rights records, was located smack in the middle of my property. They'd been pumping water from my grandfather's land for over a decade without permission. But that wasn't all. I also learned that the only access road leading to the 5 affected homes passed through a slim, dusty corner of the rancha road my grandfather had allowed them to use informally, with no written agreement. That night, I hired a local surveyor to mark the correct property boundaries with bright neon stakes and tape. A week later, I hired a fence contractor to erect a tall, black steel fence exactly along the legal property line. That fence cut straight through the luxury home's manicured backyards. Pools were blocked, garden paths severed. One resident couldn't even access their garage anymore. Chaos erupted. Homeowners were irate, calling the sheriff and demanding I be arrested. But when deputies arrived and saw my paperwork, they shrugged. Civil matter, they said. Sort it out in court. Cheryl Hanley showed up the next morning with 2 high-priced attorneys in tow. She banged on my door like she owned the place. "You need to take that fence down immediately," she barked. I stayed calm. "I'm just securing my property." "We'll sue you for everything you have," one lawyer threatened. I smiled. "Before you do, you should know I've already filed a complaint with the County Water Authority about the illegal well usage. And tomorrow, I'm blocking the only road that accesses those 5 homes. They won't be able to get in or out." Cheryl turned pale. "You can't do that," she whispered. "Oh, I can. And I will unless you're ready to talk about a fair deal." 2 days later, we met again. This time, every HOA board member was present along with the affected homeowners. The tone was very different. We negotiated a settlement. The HOA agreed to purchase the encroached acre at full market value $500,000. Additionally, they'd pay $150,000 for 10 years of unauthorized water usage. I granted legal easements for the road and well, along with annual access fees. Best of all, Cheryl Hanley was forced to resign after it came to light that she'd known about the property discrepancy for years and actively concealed it from the other board members. A month later, I received a check for $650,000. With the money, I restored my grandfather's ranch house, bringing it back to its former glory-wide porches, new floors, even a weather vane shaped like a hawk. I left behind city life and started a small organic farm. Tomatoes, blueberries, and heirloom apples now grow where scrub weeds once ruled. Sometimes, when I'm riding my horse along the fence line, I wave at the neighbors in Clearwater Grove. Most of them have warmed up. They were victims of deception, just like I was misled by people they trusted. The new HOA president even invited me to their summer barbecue. I brought homemade apple pie, using the same recipe my grandfather taught me when I was a boy. As we sat under the patio lights that evening, sharing food and stories, I realized something. My grandfather wouldn't have just fought to reclaim the land. He would have stood his ground, but also given people a chance to make things right. And that's exactly what I did. Because justice isn't just about courtrooms or lawsuits. Sometimes it's about holding your line literally and figuratively and doing it with honor. Especially when that land carries your family's legacy.